The treble is the greatest football achievement at the club level, one that only a short list of Europe's exclusive teams have ever achieved. This near impossible feat involves a team not only winning their domestic league trophy, but also their main domestic cup, and to top it off, arguably the most difficult club competition to win, the UEFA Champions League. Just competing in all of these competitions in one season is considered a great success for some clubs, but winning every single one of them has only been done by these select few teams in football history. In 1967, Celtic not only won the treble, but a quintuple of trophies. They won every single competition they played in the entire season. Their legacy was undermined because they aren't a major English club, but this was one of, if not the greatest individual seasons ever recorded by a team. They managed to score a world record 196 goals this year. But even more impressive than this was the fact that every single player in the squad was born within a 30-mile radius, something that you'll never see again for a top European club. The first cup they won was the League Cup, similar to England's Carabao Cup format. They beat their domestic rivals, Rangers, 1-0. Just a week later, they were able to secure a second trophy, the Glasgow Cup, dominating Partick Thistle in a 4-0 victory. They had a pretty easy run through the Scottish Cup, similar to the FA Cup, except for one replay against Clyde. They then faced current cup holders Aberdeen in the final, and they went 3 for 3 in finals and clean sheets, defeating them 2-0, courtesy of 2 Willie Wallace goals. The most difficult title for them to win was the league campaign. Despite only losing 2 matches the entire season, their rivals, Rangers, were still very much in the title race with only 2 matches left in the season. They were facing them at the tail end of the season in a penultimate match to keep Celtic's treble dreams alive. Celtic only needed a draw to secure the title, and they were just about able to squeeze a 2-2 result, as Rangers put up an impressive fight. Celtic were also competing in their first ever European Cup competition this year, the old version of the Champions League. They made it to the quarterfinals with ease, and were able to complete a comeback against Yugoslav champions Vojvodina. They then toppled Czech side Dukla Prague, and found themselves in the finals in their maiden European Cup season. They were the underdogs, but dominated their opponents, Inter Milan. The Italian side had only 4 shots the entire match, compared to Celtic's 24. Their manager, Jack Stein, stated, "Winning was important, but it was the way that we won that has filled me with satisfaction. We did it by playing football. Pure, beautiful, inventive football. There was not a negative thought in our heads." The unbeatable Celtic side was given the name the Lisbon Lions, and their entire east stand at Celtic Park is dedicated to the quintuple winning side. The west stand is dedicated to Jack Stein. Just a few years later, Ajax were able to achieve the second ever recorded treble in Europe, winning the Eredivisie, the KNVB Cup, and the European Cup. Led by Netherlands' greatest player of all time, the late Johan Cruyff, Ajax only lost 1 match their entire season in all competitions, even fewer than Celtic did in their unprecedented quintuple campaign. This loss came in the Eredivisie against Go Ahead Eagles, the most randomly named club in all of Europe. They didn't lie though, as they went ahead 3-2 at home to hand Ajax their only loss of the domestic and continental competitions. This wasn't enough to bring any doubt to their Eredivisie campaign though, and they finished the season with a record 12-1 win against Vitesse at home. This insane record was somehow beaten in 2020, however, as Ajax beat Venlo 13-0. Lockdown footy was different, man. The KNVB Cup, also known as the Dutch Cup, is their equivalent of the FA Cup. They started off the competition with another 10-plus goal thriller, defeating Zwolle 8-3. They then didn't concede a single goal for the rest of the competition, and flew through to the final, where they would face FC Den Haag, not to be confused with FC Ten Hag, which most Man United fans would like to forget. Ajax came out on top in a 3-2 thriller, where Cruyff scored a decisive penalty to secure Ajax their second trophy of the season. Their European Cup campaign was a similar demonstration of defensive dominance, as they only conceded 3 goals in the entire competition. Similar to Celtic, Ajax would face Inter Milan in the final, where they would defeat the Italians 2-0 to lift their 3rd trophy. Some things never change, do they? Ajax are known to be trophy hoarders, but even by their standards, this was their most impressive season in their history. They were led by Cruyff, who scored 33 goals in all competitions, and he was backed by the best defense in the world that year. For the next treble winners, we're moving just down the road to Ajax rivals PSV Eindhoven. Going into the 1987-88 campaign, there were whispers of doubt for PSV, as they just sold a rising star, Ruud Gullit, to AC Milan for €6 million. But up-and-coming manager Guus Hiddink would not let the speculation get to him. He put out a strong PSV side led by Barcelona legend Ronald Koeman, the defender who would go on to score over 250 goals in his career. They were able to win the Eredivisie with relative ease, beating out rivals Ajax by 6 points. They only lost 2 games throughout the entire Eredivisie campaign. In the Dutch Cup, they basically walked into the finals, not showing any struggle against their opposition, and only conceding once in their march to the final game against Roda JC. This was their first real test in the domestic cup, as the game was taken to extra time. Eric Gerrits, Belgian captain and center-back partner to Koeman, scored a brace to take PSV to glory as the match ended 3-2. Finally, their third trophy, the European Cup, was won under very strange circumstances. 2 years prior, in the 1985 Heysel Stadium disaster, 39 traveling fans were tragically killed and 600 more were injured in a crowd surge after the Liverpool fans attacked the Juventus supporters. Issues with security, stadium infrastructure, and crowd maintenance led to all English clubs being banned from UEFA competitions for 5 years. Liverpool was banned for an additional year after that. With no elite English competition, the European Cup had a more level playing field than in previous years, and PSV had a much easier schedule than they likely would have if the British heavy hitters were competing. Surprisingly though, they still struggled in the Cup, and only managed to win 3 games in regular time in the entire competition. They drew in the quarterfinals against Bordeaux, and advanced on away goals. They then did the same against Real Madrid, advancing with a 1-1 aggregate. Then, in the finals, they faced Benfica, and both teams were unable to score in regular time. However, PSV kept their nerve and won 6-5 in their penalty shootout, managing to win the European Cup despite not winning a match since the second round. This was definitely one of the strangest trebles of all time, and because of the unique circumstances, this treble-winning PSV side has largely been forgotten in history. Now we're really moving on to the heavyweights. I know it's hard to believe, but many ages ago, Man United were once the most feared team in England, if not the world. No 5-back nonsense, no armless goalkeepers, no scam artists leading the attack. That's right. Just before the turn of the century, Sir Alex Ferguson's Red Devils became the first English club to complete the treble. The year before had been a disaster from their standpoint. They had a 12-point lead on Arsenal in March, and still somehow managed to let the Premier League slip from their grasp, losing by just 1 point. They didn't win a single major trophy the entire year, and it was a bleak point in Sir Alex Ferguson's managerial reign. In fact, the club's CEO went so far as to send Ferguson a personal letter. We hadn't won anything, and to be honest, we were dissatisfied. We wondered if Alex Ferguson had taken his eye off the ball a little, and if his celebrity status and interest in horses had maybe not helped. So we told him our feelings, and Roland Smith thought we should follow up with a letter. He received it and came pretty much straight back in to see me. He was furious, saying, "If that's what you think of me, then get stuffed. I'm resigning." And off he went. While their letter backfired at first, Ferguson's response had told them everything they needed to know about his intentions. The manager was furious after a trophyless campaign the year prior, and his rage would propel Man United to heights they had never seen before, that no English club had seen before in football history. They had a superstar-filled roster, with the likes of David Beckham, Ryan Giggs, Teddy Sheringham, and Peter Schmeichel. From defense to attack, they had one of the strongest teams in all of Europe. They just needed some tweaks here and there, both tactically and mentally. And the latter proved to be the most important, as this season was one to be remembered through incredible last-minute comebacks. This would be etched in football folklore as Fergie time, a term that would forever be used to represent the dying minutes of a game in which a team needed to pull off something dramatic and spectacular to have the result go their way. First of these Fergie time fixtures was the opening game of the Premier League season, when they found themselves down 2-0 against Leicester City, courtesy of English legend Emile Heskey. Teddy Sheringham gave them life in the 80th minute, and Beckham secured a point in the 90th minute with, you guessed it, a free kick goal. This dramatic season opener would set the tone for the rest of Manchester United's year. They started games shakily, but their spirit was unbreakable, and their work rate was relentless. Sir Alex Ferguson made Old Trafford a fortress, only losing 1 match there all season. Even with all of this going for them, they only barely managed to secure the title, beating out Arsenal by 1 point, which was coincidentally the same amount Arsenal had beaten them by the season before. It seemed like the letter from the CEO had worked its magic, as Ferguson had taken Man United to the top of England once more. And he wasn't finished there. The FA Cup started off with a huge matchup as they faced Middlesbrough, the only team that beat them at home all season, which had happened just a few weeks prior to this rematch. They won it in true Fergie time fashion, with Irwin and Giggs scoring in the 82nd and 90th minute, respectively. And just a few weeks later, things would come to an even more dramatic finish against rivals Liverpool. They went a goal behind, and despite their constant pressure, Liverpool would not move an inch. But after wearing them down for the entire second half, they miraculously scored twice past the 88th minute to secure a win at the death and advance to the next round. It was all part of Ferguson's script. Conceding early? No problem. United would lull their opponents into a false sense of security, then strike when it hurt the most. They faced Newcastle in the final, and wouldn't stick to their regular game plan. They went ahead early and managed to hang on to their lead, courtesy of Sheringham and Scholes. With 2 trophies down, they only had 1 to go. But it was arguably the most difficult of them all. Man United would face Bayern Munich in the final at the Camp Nou in Barcelona. Both of these teams were competing for a treble, club football's highest honor, and only one would come out on top. Ferguson had his work cut out for him going into what was their most important match of the season, with star midfielders Scholes and Keane suspended after picking up too many yellow cards. Beckham was moved from right wing to center mid, and Giggs was switched from the left to the right side. It was a lineup the United fans hadn't seen before, and it clearly was going to need some adjustment, as they went behind early, courtesy of a Bayern free kick. But as the game progressed, Man United got stronger and stronger, absorbing pressure from Bayern, keeping the ball, and slowly transitioning into attack. However, as the 90th minute approached, they were still faced with a 1-goal deficit and only a few minutes of added time, or should I say, Fergie time. In the 91st minute, the United supporters erupted in cheers as Sheringham put one past the legendary keeper Oliver Kahn, leveling the match right at the death. There was a mix of jubilation and relief as they would be sending the match to extra time, but Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had other ideas.
Beckham with the corner. Oh, it's Solskjaer! Can you believe it?
It was the greatest comeback in Champions League history, concluding Manchester United's greatest season in history. From 1-0 down in the 90th minute of the final to winning the match in the 94th minute, immortalizing the term Fergie time. Sir Alex Ferguson had proven his own boss wrong, propelling the Red Devils to their greatest ever individual season, becoming the first English team to win the coveted treble. He was subsequently knighted for his genius and managerial excellence. What happens when you have the greatest manager of all time oversee the greatest player of all time? Ask any of the Barcelona fans who were there for the 2008-2009 season, and I'm sure they could still tell you. Pep Guardiola was appointed as Barcelona's manager after dominating the competition with their B team in 2007. He fully embodied the Barcelona tiki-taka system, dominating the ball and overwhelming the opposition with quick one-touch passing and dizzying off-ball movement. You don't have to worry about defending if you don't let your opponents touch the ball. However, this new system wasn't clicking at first. Barcelona lost its first game of the season against Numancia, a small club from Soria. They were unable to score against the city of 40,000 residents. Things were off to a very bleak beginning for Pep and Barca, and after dropping points in their next match against an equally beatable Racing Santander, the Camp Nou faithful were already questioning if La Liga was too big a stage for the up-and-coming Spanish manager. But in reality, he saw things that even the best players couldn't see on their own, and under his rule, in a little bit of time, he would enlighten every single player on the pitch. They went on to dominate La Liga, spearheaded by a 21-year-old phenom Lionel Messi and Cameroonian marksman Samuel Eto'o. They went to the top of the table in match week 9 and didn't give up their spot at the pinnacle for the rest of the season, even for a week. The Copa del Rey was no less dominant for Barca, dismantling Atletico Bilbao in the final in a 4-1 win. This reformed team under Pep had world-class talent at every turn, with Yaya Touré, Busquets, and Xavi in the midfield, reinforced with a star-studded back line of Puyol, Piqué, Dani Alves, and Victor Valdez. In the Champions League, they continued their attacking prowess, putting 4 or 5 goals past opponents for fun. Lionel Messi was impossible to stop on his day, as he was able to dribble past defenders with ease or set up a teammate with a disguised pass when he was double or even triple teamed. It seemed like no matter what obstacle they faced, they were able to work around it with ease, while playing some of the most beautiful football you've ever seen. 2008 Barcelona was like a well-oiled machine, a hive mind. Every player connected through invisible strings, mesmerizing the opposition with fluid movements and triangular passes. They beat formidable opponents in the knockout rounds, getting the better of a star-studded Chelsea and German tacticians Bayern Munich. They promenaded to the finals, where they would face Manchester United in Rome. The first big matchup between football's finest, Messi versus Ronaldo, talent versus discipline, art versus machine. And at least for now, the little Argentinian would come out on top in what would be the greatest rivalry for the next 15 years. Barcelona shut out United in a 2-0 victory, securing Messi's name as one of the world's best, and propelling Pep Guardiola up the list of managerial masterminds. Like a beautiful curse, the treble followed Samuel Eto'o into the next season, as he was sold to Inter Milan from Barcelona for just 20 million euros. He was partnered with the signings of Dutch maestro Wesley Sneijder and Brazilian centre-back Lucio, and Inter were looking to take Italy by storm heading into the 2009 season. However, Inter had an unbelievably talented list of players departing their club, including Bonucci, Ibra, Luis Figo, Crespo, and Patrick Vieira. Mourinho seriously had his work cut out for him. He may have grown more eccentric over the years, but one thing's for certain, he could set up a defensive line that could stop an asteroid. Although their tactics were centered around shutting down their opponents, with one of the best defenses of all time, they weren't shy in front of goal either. Milito and Eto'o carried their attack, scoring 46 goals between the two of them. Front to back, they were just unstoppable, with an incredibly physical and hard-working squad. On their 101st anniversary, Inter were able to celebrate with a 5th consecutive Serie A title, dramatically winning on the very last day of the season. They also won the Coppa Italia in style, with 4 clean sheets in their 5 knockout games. Mourinho didn't care what competition they were playing in. He had one tactic: defend first, wear your opponent down, and hurt them on the counter. They can't beat you if they don't score. Perhaps their only true struggle throughout the entire 2009 campaign was in the Champions League group stage, drawing with each of the 3 other teams in their group. However, they were able to beat Rubin Kazan on their last match day to secure a spot over them in the knockout round. They then advanced somewhat seamlessly to the finals, using their home matches to carry them through. They managed to topple their biggest opponents of the year, Barca, who they were unable to beat in 2 fixtures in the group stage. They would then be matched up against German champions Bayern Munich in the final, where they would once again rely on their defensive army to carry them to victory. They won 2-0, courtesy of a brace from their top goalscorer, Milito.
Hey, I've seen this one. This is a classic.
Sold Jerome Boateng down the river. Just a little drop of the shoulder.
After Inter's best ever season, Mourinho decided to jump ship to join Real Madrid the following season. They became the first and only Italian side to win a treble as of the making of this video. Unlike most of the previous treble-winning campaigns, Bayern didn't have any major transfers going into the 2012-13 season. They brought in the Croat Mario Mandzukic to be their striker, and Javi Martinez right before the deadline for a record Bundesliga fee at the time, 40 million euros. They also acquired Xherdan Shaqiri to provide some squad depth on the wing for an aging Ribéry and Robben, also known as Robbery. Their side basically looked like the German national team, with Neuer, Boateng, Lahm, Kroos, Schweinsteiger, Muller, and Gomez all playing a huge role in their success. To no one's surprise, they absolutely ran a train through the Bundesliga, winning the league by 25 points. They went to the top of the table in matchday 1 and didn't give that spot up for a second the rest of the campaign. Their goal difference was over double the runners-up Dortmund, only conceding 18 goals in their 34-match season. I mean, these guys were ruthless even in friendly matches, winning 15, even 17-0 against their opponents, only in Germany, man. Additionally, they terrorized the DFB Pokal, with 17 goals scored and 1 conceded leading up to the finals. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that Stuttgart locker room before the final. But to be fair to them, Stuttgart brought the game to Bayern, going down 3 goals but bringing it back 3-2 before the final whistle. The only competition where they really faced any sort of resistance was the Champions League. In their second group stage match, they lost 3-1 against Belarusian side Borisov, in one of the craziest results in the competition's history. However, they were able to bounce back courtesy of Thomas Muller and Claudio Pizarro picking up red-hot form, and they finished level on points with Valencia to advance to the knockout rounds. They faced a formidable Arsenal in the first round, narrowly escaping with a 3-3 aggregate. They just had such an overpowered front line with some of the craziest squad depth you'll ever see. Mandzukic, Pizarro, Muller, and Mario Gomez for their strike force, each of them putting up at least 17 goals past their opponents in all competitions that year. The quarters and semis were a demonstration of German dominance, beating Juventus 4-0 and Barca 7-0 in aggregate scores. And, almost as if it were scripted, they would face their arch rivals in the final, Borussia Dortmund. A Der Klassiker Champions League final under the bright lights of Wembley Stadium for the treble, and to top off Bayern's greatest season of all time. Things started off according to plan, as Neuer kept the Bayern goal safe with 5 saves in the first 35 minutes, and Mandzukic gave Bayern an early second half lead with a left-footed finish. However, Dortmund would throw a wrench in their plans for an easy victory, as Gundogan equalized just minutes later from the spot. Bayern had less than half an hour to secure the Champions League trophy and etch their names into footballing history. And in almost as dramatic a fashion as Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United, Robben took the game by the scruff of the neck, scoring a game winner in the 90th minute. All it took was 1 flying Dutchman and 1 scuffed kick to immortalize the 2012-13 Bayern Munich team, securing the club's first ever treble, beating their greatest rivals on the biggest stage with one of the last kicks of the game. A footballing fairy tale for the German juggernauts. The following season, Bayern were possibly the most feared team on the planet. However, halfway across Europe, there was a diminutive man who was by far the most feared man in football. Going into the 2014-15 season, Messi was coming off the most impressive individual seasons any player has ever had, including an unbeatable record of scoring 91 goals in a calendar year. His goal contributions and his highlight reels demonstrated a galactic level that had never been touched by man before, and even though he didn't need any reinforcements, he was partnered with the greatest front 3 of all time, with the lethal Luis Suarez and awe-inspiring Neymar. But even with this incredible lineup on paper, Real Madrid had a super team of their own, and would not make things easy for them. In one of the most impressive and dramatic title races in history, Barcelona managed to secure La Liga by only 2 points, despite picking up an incredible 94 points. Losing the league with 92 points, you have to feel bad for Madrid at that point. MSN were just too powerful, toying with Spanish competition in both La Liga and the Copa del Rey. They flew through to the finals while demonstrating some of the most devastating attacking football ever seen. They beat Bilbao 3-1 in the final, courtesy of Messi and Neymar. In the Champions League, they were able to come out on top of their crazy group of PSG, Ajax, and Cyprus's Apoel. And their knockout matchups weren't easy either, having to make their way through City, PSG, and Bayern to face Juventus in the final. If you look at this schedule, you would have thought UEFA were throwing everyone in Barca's way to prevent them from winning their second ever treble. But the Messiah and his 10 disciples couldn't be beaten, and they defeated Juventus 3-1 in the final, and Barca became the first club to win 2 trebles. Bayern's 2019 started off in mourning, as they were robbed of Robbery, with Robben retiring and Ribéry going to Fiorentina on a free. However, they brought in 2 World Cup winners in Benjamin Pavard and Lucas Hernandez, as well as Coutinho from Barca on a 1-year loan. Unlike their first treble in 2013, their Bundesliga campaign wasn't a walk in the park for them. After match week 14, they found themselves in 7th place, completely outside of even a Champions League spot, let alone the title race. However, in possibly the greatest ever stretch of league matches, Bayern picked up 55 out of 57 possible points in the remaining fixtures, bringing them from mid-table to Bundesliga frontrunners, winning by 13 points. In the DFB Pokal, Lewandowski carried them to victory, scoring 6 and 6, including a brace in the finals against Bayer Leverkusen. The Champions League group stage was baby food for them, with 6 wins out of 6 to take them straight into the round of 16. They beat Chelsea 7-1 over 2 legs, unfazed by the 5-month gap in between matches due to the COVID pandemic. After this, UEFA decided that there would only be 1 neutral game per knockout stage to decrease the potential spread of the virus, all to be played in Portugal. I think Barcelona were thankful for this temporary format, as they lost 8-2 and were possibly saved from even further embarrassment in a second leg. It was a French affair from then on, as they beat underdogs Olympique Lyon in the semis and found themselves facing PSG, who had never won the competition at this point, and the Parisians were betrayed by one of their own, as Kingsley Coman scored in the 60th minute past his former employers to secure the lockdown treble for Bayern. Lewandowski was their player of the season, scoring 45 goals and finished top scorer in both the Bundesliga and the Champions League. Pep Guardiola's Manchester City had the most dominant reign over English football ever seen, winning the Premier League 6 times in 7 years, including a 4-peat from 2020 to 2024. He's also the only manager to feature twice on this list, further cementing him in the very top of the GOAT manager debate. Of his most rampant Manchester City crusades, 1 year stood out from the rest, the 2022-23 campaign. And what would a ruthless European rampage be without a 6'5" Viking at the helm of your ship? City completed the internet-breaking move for Erling Haaland from Dortmund for just £60 million. For some perspective, that's half of what they paid for Grealish just a few seasons prior. Speaking of, make sure to check out my video rating every Prem team's record transfer here. The new number 9 had followed in his father's footsteps, who had played for the Citizens from 2000 to 2003, but his career was cut short due to a horrific leg injury after a challenge from Roy Keane. The 22-year-old took no time to get up and running, scoring a brace in his first Premier League match against West Ham. He continued with an unprecedented run of form, scoring his first hat-trick in just his 4th match, and then his second hat-trick in his 5th match, totaling 9 goals in his first 6 games. This City team was Pep Guardiola's piece de resistance, his magnum opus, even stronger than his and Messi's Barcelona in 2009. They went on to win their 3rd consecutive Premier League title, a feat that had only been achieved by their Mancunian neighbors before. Erling Haaland had smashed the goal-scoring records in his maiden season, scoring 36 in a 38-game season. Their FA Cup run was a case of men versus boys, scoring 19 and conceding 0 going into their final match against Man United. It was a Manchester derby for the ages, and Man City were able to clinch the trophy thanks to 2 Gundogan strikes, including one within the first minute of the match. And in the penultimate competition of their so-far perfect season, they advanced out of their group with ease, undefeated in all 6 matches. And the round of 16 matchup was a statement piece, beating Leipzig 7-0 in the second leg, courtesy of 5 Erling Haaland goals. They were then faced with arguably 2 of the best teams in the world, facing a strong Bayern Munich and then the Champions League Galacticos, Real Madrid. After convincingly beating the greatest competition in the land, they were then faced with, you guessed it, Inter Milan. And we all know what happens when a team comes against Inter in the Champions League final. Rodri's brilliant strike was enough to put the most famous runners-up to bed, and just like that, the Citizens had completed their first ever treble to top off their most dominant era in the club's history. The most recent treble as of 2025 occurred under PSG's revival via Luis Enrique. It was a year defined by redemption and relentlessness, and the beautiful renaissance of France's Ousmane Dembélé. Make sure to watch my video on his incredible comeback here. In the summer of 2024, Mbappe left the Parisians to join Real Madrid after an incredibly dramatic end to his contract with the club. The PSG fans were shocked when they didn't sign a direct replacement for him, and instead, the manager entrusted failed wonder boy Ousmane Dembélé to fill Mbappe's €180 million boots. I mean, what on earth was Luis Enrique thinking? Dembélé hadn't been fit since 2022, and it had been even longer since he had shown his world-class potential on the wing. But Enrique doubled down on this risk, moving him to center forward, being the main focus in attack for their side. Whether it was a managerial masterclass, or maybe a bit of the dark arts, this Hail Mary seemed to pay off and then some, as Dembélé carried the PSG attack in Ligue 1. They won in expected yet dominant fashion, beating out second-place Marseille by 19 points. The Coupe de France was off to a rocky start for them, as Lens took them to penalties in their first match. However, after this wake-up call early in the tournament, they made sure not to make the same mistakes, flying through to the final courtesy of Doué, Ramos, and Barca all carrying their weight in goals. They beat Reims 3-0 in the final to lift their second domestic trophy of the season. The Champions League's new format seemed to throw off PSG as much as it did the rest of us, and they were looking down and out heading into the final match day. However, their talisman was able to score a hat-trick against Stuttgart, and they were able to advance by the skin of their French teeth. Similar to the Coupe de France, however, they flourished after a tough beginning. They were matched up against Brest, who, although smaller, were great to watch. They had a great pair up front and were looking to be held to a high standard. But PSG demolished them 10-0 over 2 legs, and we unfortunately had to see Micah Richards' favorite Champions League team get eliminated.
And as we all know on this show, we all love a bit of Brest, so we move on.
They then went on to beat an all-English cast of Liverpool, Villa, and Arsenal to face, somehow, Inter in the Champions League final. I'm starting to feel bad for the Italians at this point. In an almost Mr. Beast level giveaway, Inter handed a 4th team their treble, as PSG put 5 past an aging Milano side. So that was every treble-winning team so far. Who will be the next team to win this prestigious award? Please let me know in the comments below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you in the next video.